BACP's most recent public perception survey has reported that over 2/3 of adults have experienced mental health issues in the past 5 years.
Yes, I mean, it's not surprising with everything going on with the pandemic and social and political issues around discrimination and civil rights, and it's really taken a toll on people's mental health. And I think in the UK there's been more of a understanding of the importance of getting support for our mental health.
And yet, I think people are still quite confused about actually how to seek support and what support they should be looking for.
So I suppose we start at the very beginning. What is therapy?
So therapy is an opportunity to explore your thoughts and feelings with a trained professional. So it's really different to speaking to a friend or a loved one because we're trained to offer a unjudgmental, unbiased space for you to just really explore whatever it is that's going on for you.
And it's important to remember that therapy is not advice giving. Therapy is meant to help you to explore and develop insight into your own areas and challenges of concern, to develop your own solutions to your problem.
There are so many different therapies available. How would you even know where to start with that?
I highly suggest that if you are interested in a specific type of therapy that you've come across in your search, to research it a bit more and to seek out therapists that maybe are practicing in that type of modality.
So who benefits most from therapy?
Well, anyone. So it might be that you're dealing with anxiety, low mood, you might be coping with grief.
And also people come to therapy wanting to explore their relationships, their gender identity, sexual orientation, if they've experienced any racial discrimination and navigating that type of trauma.
You said bereavement. It interests me because it's not just about the loss of a person. It can be anything, the loss of status, a job, and particularly in our times.
Therapy doesn't have to be something that you access when you're in crisis. It could be when you're just having niggling questions around things that are going on in your life, or you may have a concern that keeps reoccurring and you're seeing a pattern. And therapy can help you to really uncover what's at the root of that, what's really going on for you, and help you to develop insight to get some of those answers.
It sounds big, and it's sometimes the most important shift and change a person can do for themselves in their whole life. How do you know you can get the right fit and the right therapist first off?
It's so important to find a therapist that we feel comfortable around, that could be a good fit, because developing that relationship is the core of the therapeutic process. And sometimes we'll look for a therapist of a similar ethnic background or gender identity or sexual orientation. I've had quite a few clients that have come to me because they're looking for a black male therapist. So there are multiple factors that we have to consider when we're looking for the right fit in a therapist.
And it's worth adding that it's really important to find a qualified professional, so someone who is registered by a professional body such as BACP. And you can search their directory and filter through whatever issue it is that you're wanting to work on, as well as the location that you're based in, or whether you're wanting to work online or face-to-face.
Absolutely. And when it comes to being qualified, it takes a long time to train as a therapist, doesn't it?
It does. It can take between 2 to 6 years. When that training is robust, you have academic and reflective lectures, you're in a placement for hundreds of hours that's supervised by a qualified therapist, you're undergoing your own personal therapy, and you're also doing CPD.
So Lara, when we go to therapy for the first time, it can be terrifying. What can people expect?
When you come to a therapy session, they're typically 50 minutes long, and then you can use the time in between a session to kind of think about, digest, and maybe work on some of the stuff that's come up in the session.
Therapy is really about you and what you're bringing to the session, so keeping an open mind, especially in the first session. Understandably, it's hard to say everything because you're seeing a stranger, but being open to allowing yourself to get to know your therapist is so important, to develop that relationship.
What's the costing like?
Some charitable organisations will be able to offer some therapy support, and you can get access from the NHS as well, but you might also want to access counselling privately, and so that can range from £35 per session upwards.
Lara, Anthony, thank you both.
Thank you, it's been a pleasure.